My name is Nat Welch, co-chair of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee. And I am calling this public meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Today's agenda was posted on the committee's page on the town website. This public meeting is available on Zoom and it is being recorded. On June 16th of this year, Governor Baker signed into law an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This act includes an extension until April 1st, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12th, 2020 executive order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The new law has two major parts. First, the new law allows public bodies to continue providing live, quote, adequate alternative means, unquote, of public access to the deliberations of the public body, instead of holding meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public. Second, the new law authorizes all members of a public body to continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meeting law's requirements that a quorum of a body and the chair be physically present at the meeting location remain suspended. For those of you on Zoom, if you haven't already done so, please identify yourself on the screen. You can do this by clicking on the three dots at the top of the box containing your image and clicking on the rename feature. We're going to request that everyone mute their microphones to limit background noise and only unmute them when called on. This is the first hybrid meeting of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee, and I'll ask the public's and the committee's indulgence as we learn how to undertake our deliberations in this new format. As you'll note in the posted agenda, members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions, provide public comment, and give feedback. We will also at certain times ask for input from the public. If you are physically in the meeting room, please please just stand up and let us know what you want to say, and you'll be called on. If you are on Zoom, please raise your hand and the chair will call on you. We will try to alternate between the Zoom room and the room. In all cases, please identify yourself with your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 1 or 2 minutes. All votes will continue to be taken by roll call. In the event of any technical difficulties where Zoom becomes unavailable and we cannot recover within 5 minutes, this meeting will be ended and all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will be automatically continued on the next BSRT Advisory Committee meeting. Thank you for your patience and understanding as we move to this next phase. The minutes for tonight's meeting will be taken by committee member Adrian Boardman. Thank you, Adrian. And at this time, I will ask the committee members to indicate that they are present. Mrs. Hollander? Present. Adrian Boardman? Present. Dorcas Miller? Present. Debbie Edelman? Present. John Soden?
I got on mute. Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. John is connecting via Zoom, and myself, Nat Welch, are present. And with 6 members, we have a full quorum for this meeting. Our next agenda item is to approve the minutes of the meeting from June 3rd. Are there any edits from the members for these meeting minutes taken so well by Adrian Boardman? No?
Move to approve.
Second. Roll call. A motion has been made and seconded for approval. Mr. Hollander?
Yes.
Ms. Boardman?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Edelman?
Yes.
Mr. Soden?
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye as well. The motion to approve the minutes passes unanimously. As always, I'd like to invite Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management, to provide her monthly update to the committee.
Okay, this has been posted on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee's website. And so if anyone wants to view it, you may. But the Phase 2B update is that the steel beams will be set this weekend over Route 2. And the Mass DOT is going to be closing off the westbound portion, I think, of Route 2, redirecting traffic up to over to Weatherby Street, then allowing them to continue. That will be from about 8 p.m. Friday evening till about noon on Saturday, maybe a little after, early afternoon Saturday. So I'm hopeful that I could get out there and get some pictures if Nat doesn't already beat me to it.
Your night vision goggles on.
Yeah.
And if any of the committee members are interested in having a tour of the Acton side of construction, Mike Winnick, the Mass DOT project manager, is going to try to schedule something for next week. It'll probably be sometime in the morning. So as soon as he lets me know what, I've suggested Wednesday or Thursday of next week, if as possibilities, and he will get back to me and I'll let you know. For phase 2C, I consulted with our town engineer, Steve Duprin, and he suggested that we re-engage GPI, Green and Peterson Incorporated, to design a curb ramp. That was what was intended at the end of the parking area, but was an oversight on everyone's part, Mass DOT, the contractor, the engineer, the designer, the town. We all missed it because our thinking had been to try to direct people using the trail on bikes to use the spur and not cut through the parking lot. But noting that there are some handicapped access issues because the two handicapped parking spaces are located closest to the Neshoba Brook Bridge, we felt that it was important to at least provide that curb ramp. So GPI will make that design change and put a detail together, and then the town engineering office is working with another designer to make improvements over in West Concord on Commonwealth Ave between Church Street and the new Harrell Street entrance. And as part of that contract, we'll be able to have a contractor install this curb ramp. So funds will be used from the Community Preservation Committee to make that happen. But it will be done probably, if not this fall, then next spring or summer. The last half mile, the Natural Resources Commission did issue its order of conditions for this part of the project, and it is being recorded now. So we'll be all set and ready to go with that. And then Mass DOT's comments on the 75% design plans have been shared with the design consultants. I've been provided with a link, but I haven't been able to get in to read them yet. But as you might read, our consultant, Matt Kearney, has noted that District 4 project section is asking for justification of use of the timber rail fence in the cut sections of the trail, and that typically they are only requiring fencing as a safety measure. So there will be some continued discussion about that as it relates to the wood rail fence that has been proposed on the westerly side of the trail that is adjacent to the Stone Lane residence. And if it becomes to be determined that it is a non-participatory feature, I did make a commitment at one of our prior meetings that I would seek CPA funds for that project. But that will require a town meeting vote next year. So we will continue that conversation, and generally, once Mass DOT provides its comments, there is an opportunity for the designers to meet with DOT to resolve those comments. And so that will be part of the conversation, and that will take place either in August or September. And then Sudbury believes that they will move on to 100% design after that.
Can I ask two questions?
Yes.
What is CPA, Concord Planning?
No, CPA, it stands for the Community Preservation Act.
Okay.
And it is a law that has been adopted by the town of Concord, so that there is a tax on all property owners whose properties are worth 200,000 or more. There is a number that is not included, but to fund money, to fund program projects that meet one of four criteria: either open space and recreation, historic preservation, affordable housing,
And affordable.
affordable housing, preservation. Anyway, there are four, and I'm not thinking of the fourth one right now. But so that is there's a community preservation committee that reviews project applications. Those are due in September, And they go through a formal process, and then they make the recommendation to town meeting, and then town meeting will then vote A or nay.
So it's a pool of money to do.
Recreation.
So this would be the
Okay,
money.
thank
that
you.
would
Yeah,
be-
Yeah, open
recreation.
space.
Thank you, Matt.
Because I was wondering where the rail trail, like, I didn't think it was preservation. I was trying to figure out.
It's
Recreation.
Parts of it
Parts of
were
open space.
determined to be, so,
Okay,
but it's mostly open space and recreation.
and
Like,
then,
like the bike racks in West Concord, right? Or the bike thing in West Concord, is that CPA that we're doing?
No.
That was something else,
That's another
okay.
grant that I was.
Okay, community connections, got it,
Yes.
okay.
So, Beth Sudmeyer, my counterpart in, Sudbury, notes the schedule that they seem to be on track to, meet the 100% design now, and then their goal is to be ready with design completion by June of 2022. And then it would be advertised and hopefully bid in the fall, contract and negotiated, and construction starting in 2023, in spring of 2023. And then they too have to go through a notice of intent and order of conditions with the Sudbury Conservation Commission.
Right, because they're passing through a bunch of
Right.
wetlands.
But in this case, it's Mass DOT that is the applicant, not the town of Sudbury. So there are some advantages to having Mass DOT be the applicant. For the Community Connections Grant follow-up, I've been authorized to order the equipment. I've contacted Darrow Bike. They are going to give me a quote for the equipment and the shipping. The state will pay for the equipment. The town is responsible for the shipping and installation. And I've coordinated, I've alerted Concord Public Works that this is coming. They will schedule it for this fall, either in September or October, and move forward with getting that installed.
Can you remind me where it was landed on what was being, because I know there's discussion, like, did you need a shelter with a cover, or is this just wrap?
We have 4, it's going to be, it's not a full enclosure, but it is an overhang shelter. There are 4 of them that will be in a row. It will take up approximately 4 parking spaces in the newly created parking spaces along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, since those are spaces that we cannot charge for. So I felt it was not a
Using
great
for good,
loss.
right?
And this is like past Commonwealth
It,
in that lot area?
if you're entering the West Concord commuter lot
Mhm,
and you see that there's a left turn
mhm.
for some parking spaces, it would be those first 4
Oh,
parking
right,
spaces
okay,
right near. I think there's a bench nearby and a panel. So
okay.
it's a good node or meeting place, I think, before you cross over to the commuter rail line.
and what we're talking about are bike racks?
Bike racks.
Okay, semi-covered bike racks. They look awesome.
So,
Okay.
so that's my update.
Okay,
Marcia, do you want to, at some point, talk about what was at the Transportation Committee in terms of the
when we do the liaison,
signalization,
or
Oh,
the new things that on Old Marlboro
right,
Road that affect
that's
the
right.
trails directly?
We learned just before the 4th of July, there was a shared streets and spaces grant, a 3rd round offered by Mass DOT, and with a focus on safety improvements and mobility. And so after hearing concerns about Old Marlboro Road speeds and where the Bruce Freeman crosses in almost 2 locations along there, we quickly put together a grant application to fund an upgrade in the existing rectangular flashing signal at Bruce Freeman, where it crosses Old Marlboro Road, to be one that turns on
Automatically when
automatically,
you
so
ride
that
up
there'll
there,
be
right.
something in
So
the
you
pavement
don't
to,
push the button.
you won't have to push the button unless you want to. I mean,
Yeah.
a
The button would be-
pedestrian might,
the
but,
button is a pain.
but
Right.
the cyclist won't. So it will sense that there is a cyclist coming from both directions, and that's one upgrade. The second will be an installation of the same flashing beacons at Williams Road,
It
and
doesn't have one at all.
which doesn't
Yeah,
have one
that's
at all, right? And again, it will be actuated by
riders, right?
It's either going to be a camera or a sensor in the pavement. Additionally, there will be they're exploring a bike share program for installation in West Concord and at the Concord Center Visitor Center, and that will be part of that program. And then there are two other safety features, which is a flashing speed sign at a location between Harrington Ave and Williams Road in both directions, where people like to pick up speed and go quite fast, and new solar-powered flashing signs for the schools. So that's part of that safety program. It was a $92,000 plus grant from SDOT. So,
Can you say a little bit more about bike share? Are we talking like city bikes?
it's similar to City Bikes. It would be a program where you take your phone and download the app and take the bike for 4 hours or whatever.
Right, that's city bike.
Yeah, is it blue bikes or?
They have to get 3 quotes. They have 2 quotes. Blue Bikes was not interested because it's pretty small.
Yeah.
But they're talking to 2. So we hope to get that installed, as early as August if we can.
And what's the total volume of bikes per Concord?
So it's like 2 bike racks worth. So it's not very much. It's maybe 10 to 12. We had Zagster was here 2 or 3 years ago. They went bankrupt. It was an investment that we have lost money on, and so there's some hesitancy about re-engaging. So this is going to be a really great opportunity to reintroduce the concept. We've had a lot of visitors go to the visitor center asking for, where do I get a bike? And so I think this is going to be a great opportunity to check it out. Visitation has accelerated unbelievably.
Yeah.
And
It's a common question across all the bike groups that I'm participating in the general chat. They're all saying, where can I get one? Where can I get one?
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Okay. I think officially, because it's not part of the Freeman Rail Trail, the bike sharing stuff is not, in our purview.
to the extent that they go on a rail trail, and if there ever
Might
was
be.
a.
If we put the racks, if we put them, near the rail trail, it might be something we want to think about. But I'm more sensitive now to what's in our purview and what's not. Maybe we can have an opinion, definitely.
Yeah.
Which is, more bike racks is or more shared bikes is probably better.
Marcia, do you have a sense of when that grant, when the town would hear if that was approved for the upgrade to the
no,
crosswalks?
we did hear the
Oh,
grant.
it has been.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We learned the Friday before 4th of July. So
great.
was that July?
Perfect.
So do you have a sense of when they would be installed?
They're talking to providers right now, and they're going to get 3. They have to get 3 quotes because it's worth more than $10,000. They have 2 quotes, and so they're seeking that 3rd. And then as soon as it's available for
That's
installation,
great. Okay.
it usually takes a while to get things in place. Contracts go very slow, but we're very excited to see that moving forward.
Any other questions from the committee for Marcia? On this?
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Marcia. For the public, we'll have a chance a little later on to ask questions. Moving on to committee business, I'd like to welcome Debbie Edelman to the committee. She's relocated to Concord from New Jersey, but she is originally a Massachusetts native, having lived in Sherborne and Framingham. And professionally, Debbie is in risk management with a focus on ethics, compliance, and data protection, including artificial intelligence and cyber. Sure, we could use your help here. She helps make it easier for companies and their staff to understand and mitigate risks. She's definitely a cyclist. She and I have talked a lot about it, and she's joined a few local bike clubs, and I'd like the committee to welcome her and thank her for agreeing to be of service to the town as a new resident. So thank you. On the agenda, the introduction for Debbie and the trail count report were put together. So Debbie is not doing the trail count report as her ambitious opening. But in May, we had a lot of people participate in the trail counts in Concord. The data was submitted to the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And tonight we have someone to share that data back with us. Casey Cooper, who still has her maiden name on her on her sign up there.
I just realized as you were saying my name. Oops.
That's okay. That's okay. You know, you're in a period of transition. Casey is the bicycle and pedestrian program manager for the Central Transportation Planning Staff, which serves the Boston Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization. She's responsible for the data and analytics for pedestrians and bicycles, which includes the semi-annual bike counts, in which we participated this year. She's also responsible for intersection improvement and for staying current with best practices and requirements related to those two modes of transportation. She grew up in my home state, Essex Junction, Vermont, and got her undergraduate degree in environmental science. She went to Austin, Texas to study community planning, but having no car, she had to bike everywhere. And her experience is what formed her passion for helping communities make it easier to bike and to be a pedestrian. So Casey, I'd like to welcome you. I hope I got all that right in the introduction, but I'd like to welcome you to our meeting and look forward to your report, which I think, Marcia, you're gonna.
Casey, you should be able to, if you can't screen share, let me know.
Okay. Here, I actually have it on my work computer, so I just need to join the meeting from my work computer. Sorry.
I'm happy to run it for you if you'd like.
Okay. I mean, if you have it pulled up, but if you don't, I don't mind joining from Zoom. Also, thank you so much for having me. Wanted to say that first off. Yes, whatever is easiest for you. If you start.
Give me just a minute.
Okay.
I did not.
Nope, no problem.
Um,
I'm happy to just join from my work computer. I have it pulled up right now.
Okay.
You beat me to it. Okay.
Let's see.
I'm
Okay.
gonna dial in or whatever it is you do with Zoom.
Right. Okay.
So far, our Zoom hybrid is working pretty well.
Yeah, seriously, this is great. I feel like this is the first hybrid meeting that I've attended. So this is fantastic. Feel like it's the future. Okay, so.
It should be.
While you're pulling that up, Casey.
Yeah.
How many other rail trail committees or town level committees do you participate in, if any? I don't know.
So there's actually the Concord River Greenway in Lowell has like a friends group that did a count, and then there's the Southwick Rail Trail, which actually is it's closer to Springfield, but I still take their counts and post them. And then the Columbia River Greenway also counts and participates. Then we just have people who historically have just participated in the counts and who count for us every year, which is really wonderful. And then occasionally there are just people who become interested and want to become involved. Okay, let's see. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep, we are.
Okay, awesome. Sorry.
You want to do full screen on the?
Yes. There we go. I have many different pages up. Okay, perfect. Okay. Awesome. So thank you so much, Nat, for the introduction. So I'm just going to be giving you a brief overview from the awesome count data that everyone collected. We're so thankful for all the time and effort that people put into collecting this data. So we had 5 Bruce Freeman Rail Trail locations, 2 were in Acton and 3 were in Concord. I'm sure you are all familiar with these locations, but they were at the BFRT where Pedal Power Bike and Ski is in Acton, and then the BFRT parking lot that's off of Route 27. And then in Concord, we had a spot at the Neshoba Brook Bridge, a spot where Powder Mill Road goes over the BFRT, and just south of the Route 62 intersection. Out of our whole effort, there were 28 count volunteers, which is fantastic, with 38 unique counts, and that combined to create a total of 76 observed hours of bicyclists and pedestrians and other users on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Okay, so I'm just going to show a few graphs to kind of give some visualization, and we can go back to visit these if you guys want to look more into the data. I just went in order by breaking it down by day and time period per location. So this is Pedal Power Bike and Ski in Acton. And so we had an AM peak, a PM peak collection period for Tuesday. We only had a PM peak collection period for Wednesday. We had both AM, PM for Thursday, and then a PM midday peak or collection for Saturday, and no Sunday collection. And if anyone is trying to say something, please just yell, because I can't really see you right now. I'm sorry. Okay, so and the next location is the Route 27 parking lot, or the parking lot off of Route 27. So here we had several counts for Tuesday, actually. So there was the regular AM peak period, which is 7 to 9 a.m. And then there was some miscommunication, but we got more data, which was fantastic. So we actually had a few volunteers count until 11:30. So I created a new late morning category. And then we have our PM peak. Our PM peak is 4 to 6. And then, so Thursday we had an AM peak collection. We didn't have any collection in the evening, and on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, the same thing. We had an AM peak collection period and no evening collection period, and no weekend collection here. And now we move on to Concord. Concord had pretty much all the bases covered, aside from AM peak, which I think is lost in transit in the USPS mail system. I'm sure I will get a hold of it at some point. But so we had PM peak for Tuesday, AM and PM peak for Wednesday, AM midday and PM peak for Thursday, because you all did a great job of adding that 2 to 4 hour time period on Thursday. So there is that additional bit of information. And then the midday Saturday and Sunday collection periods, which are noon to 2 p.m. on both Saturday and Sunday. Powder Mill Road had a similar situation where I am still missing one of the count sheets, but I believe that was sent through USPS mail, and I haven't received it yet, but I'm sure I will. So we had every single count period covered, including that Thursday midday 2 to 4 p.m. And then lastly, the Route 62 intersection had, I have all of the count data in for that. So we have AM, PM, and AM, PM peak for Tuesday, Wednesday, plus midday for Thursday, and then midday for Saturday and Sunday. So that's like a bunch of information. We can go back and look at it, but here's an overview of just a comparison between all of the different count locations. So the location at which there were by far the most bicyclists and pedestrians counted was Route 62, with Powder Mill Road as a follow-up. Although Neshoba Brook Bridge and Pedal Power Bike and Ski were fairly close, and Route 27 was not that far behind. So that's just a bunch of data, and it's really hard to kind of absorb it all. I'm going to give you some statistics that might kind of provide a sort of bigger picture for everyone. So it's still just a bunch of numbers, but a total of 1,663 bicyclists were counted, which is a great amount, and 1,713 pedestrians were counted. There were another 68 people considered other, which could have been skateboarders, rollerbladers, that type of additional user of the path that didn't fit into like a wheelchair, walking, tandem bike type situation. So using the Rails for Trails calculator, they have a trail traffic calculator. We were able to estimate that the annual average daily traffic is 394 trips a day. So that's incredible. That's fantastic. And you can only imagine how much more that amount of travel is going to increase once that bridge is complete over Route 2. So as an annual traffic estimate through that calculator, they provided an estimate of 143,883 trips, which is incredible. That's a lot of trips. So I'm gonna,
Sorry, is this both pedestrians and bicyclists, this 143 number?
Yep, it's combined. Mm-hmm. It has the option to just look at pedestrian and just look at bicycle. So I did do both of those, and the number was much less. And I think that that also was due to the fact that we did have a pretty solid split between people riding their bikes and people walking. So when combining them and adding the others into each time period, and this is combining all of the counts for one time period altogether along the rail trail. So this doesn't give you more of like a snapshot of each individual location, but it does give you an idea of travel along the rail trail at one time, but over a considerable distance. But yeah, so it's pretty impressive. And I have reached out to Rails to Trails to make sure that that I'm input the data correctly, because it's like a kind of wonky calculator. But we have, I mean, even to have a rough estimate of how many trips and looking at the amount of users that were collected over those days, it's not crazy to think that this could be the number of trips, which is pretty exciting.
Just so I'm clear, so this is based on both sides of the non-existent bridge. If it
Yes.
was connected, this would be potentially what the traffic would look like for a year.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's my understanding. I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing back from Rails
Yep.
to Trails and seeing if that is a correct assumption. This is the first time that I'm using this calculator, so it's a pretty exciting application of it.
And again, like how you come to that, because why is it that not having the bridge is X and then having the bridge is led to Y?
What I understand from the RT Rails to Trails Consortium, they take these different data estimates and they have some model that then says, okay, here's what you can expect along the trail. I don't know the mathematics behind it.
Okay.
That's probably an area of interest for you, given you're in this, you do that. But it might be worth having a conversation with Casey afterwards,
Okay.
in terms of how they figure that out.
Yes.
But our interest was trying to figure out on each side, what's the traffic look like and what can we expect? Because you're going to get a huge increase in ridership across the bridge. That bodes very well for economics in the town, but it also means we have other issues we have to start thinking about.
And that's what I was trying to visualize. So if Acton had whatever on the earlier slide, X, then what you're saying is, oh, we now know on the Concord side, we're going to have X plus.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially that X will move over here. A significant percentage likely
Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that far.
They're right,
And
they're
you
right
get
on.
to ride over the bridge.
Yeah.
I mean, which I think is going to be very appealing to a lot
Yeah.
of people, just for a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
But Casey, you're going to check with RTC just to kind of clarify that you're using the model right.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I almost think my guess is that there might be some sort of ambiguity between the two. So I'm not convinced that the number that it turned out is what would be there if the bridge is there. I personally think that number might even be greater, but I do think that you are spot on, Nat, with the fact that it is incorporating this concept that there's like this continuous path, and so that it is all together. So I think it might be something, I think that this doesn't necessarily anticipate that there's an unbuilt bridge, and the attraction that I'm not sure who just said it, but the appeal of like going over the bridge would create, or the draw that knowing that there's this much more mileage would create with potential users. So I'm looking forward to talking to them and finding out what they have to say, and I'll certainly report back to everyone.
That would be great. If you could send us an email, which, either Marcia or me or whatever, I'll share it back to the committee, kind of what their thinking is. And if they have a different, band of estimates, that would be interesting to find out too.
Because I'm sure that this has happened in other communities in the United States. So if they had that data to say, oh yes, it was in this town or this town, and they went through it, and they didn't have their calculator yet, but just as a comparison.
Yeah. No, I think that'd be fantastic. This is the kind of work that we love to do. It's having the bandwidth to be able to look at projects across the country. So, I mean, that's a great idea for one of the discrete projects for next year, just to look at how different people or how counts have changed throughout. So that might be a proposal idea for my future work.
Do you guys want to buy us an automated counter for our bridge?
I would love it if they would buy anyone an automated counter. Honestly, we are hoping that they will pay for it. And I mean, if we get an automated counter, I think our plan is to try and do some regional distribution. And so, I mean, you guys would be top of the list as a first candidate. So we'll see how that goes.
Marcia's magic can find a grant.
Well, I was just going to say, if we had these flashing lights when people are, crossing, can't you just add to that technology and put the counter right there? It's just another algorithm, another AI, and just whatever. I don't know who makes those.
We will put a conversation in one of our future meetings to do that, because I do think we need to think about that.
Yeah.
Let's see, other committee member questions on this? Can I open it up to the public? Does the public have any? Can you see if anybody is looking to raise their hand?
So this is Matt Johnson, your select board liaison.
Welcome, Matt. I forgot to introduce you as our new liaison. Thank you for taking us on.
Oh, my pleasure. And it was great to meet some of you in person yesterday during the site walk. I just was really struck by the relatively high counts for Concord segment of the trail versus Acton, and the relatively high proportion of pedestrians. I do think that adding the bridge will change the nature of the trips that will be on that trail. I mean, even shopping trips will be feasible. Once the bridge is in place, and then with the Sudbury portion completed, yet more options will show up. So I think it's overall very impressive, and I live a block from the trail, so I'm a heavy user myself. I'm probably in those numbers, but I think that this is a great testament to the work that everyone's done. I mean, this just shows that it's very heavily used, well loved, new resource for the town.
Thank you. Mr. Selectman, is that what I call you?
That's all right. Just call me Matt.
Did anybody else have any comments from the public?
Yes, this is Greg Mueller, Stone Root Lane.
Greg, good afternoon or evening.
Hey, evening here. Just a real quick question. Do you guys have a sense of is this against any baseline, these numbers? Have we done any measurement before to understand is it higher or lower?
Our baseline.
This is the first.
This is our baseline.
Yeah.
Because the trail didn't open until 2019, really. This is the first opportunity that we've had to do the counts. So this is our baseline.
Great, thank
And
you.
I think that's the question that was raised at the last meeting, Greg, is can we, through the organization and Casey in particular, get some benchmarking data so we can say, well, here's a rail trail that's similar to ours. Here's what their data is. They have X% of pedestrians versus cyclists and whatever. So I think that was something that we broached at the last meeting.
I think what was behind my question is this higher, lower, or increasing or decreasing compared to anything in the past. But if it's the baseline, it's the baseline.
Yep, it is a baseline. I think one of the questions we should consider is should we pass this on to the Transportation Advisory Committee? Because there are going to be, one could make the argument that Bridge is going to bring a whole lot more traffic to Junction Park, and that's in their purview right now. And I guess, Marcia, can we just ship this over to the TAC?
That is my plan.
Okay.
Since we just received this today, I did share it with the town manager and with the police department because they were the ones who were most interested.
Good.
But my intention is to share it with the next Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay, you're our liaison to that?
Correct.
Okay, good. So if we hear anything back, that'll be good. Well, it's very exciting. I really, when Richard and I first talked about, doing some work for the committee, doing this count is really important because it gives us a sense of where we are and how important the trail is to the town.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Casey, is there an opportunity? Do you do twice a year counts? Like if, for example, if the committee decides that they want to do something, is it September or October that we would target?
It's September, but honestly, September and October are both really good times. September and May are when historically the National Bicycle and Pedestrian Count Documentation Project would pick their dates, which was the middle of each month. So that's what we do. They haven't been picking times lately, so I just have followed that pattern. But if you want to do October, that's absolutely fine.
No, I'm just trying to get a sense so that we can get that into our planning. Thank you.
Yeah,
What's
of
the name
course.
of that company or that organization, National Bike Counting? What was that again?
It was the National Bicycle and Pedestrian Count Documentation Project, which I believe is now defunct. They haven't updated their website since 2019. I've emailed them and not heard back. But it was a really great resource. They were essentially trying to create days, like have a very comparable set of data across the United States, so that everyone was counting on the same days, following the same protocol, and in that way there would be able to be like a really good data source. I don't know if they ever actually made it to that next step of collecting the data from the data collectors. So if they ever pick that back up, I think that would be a really fantastic resource.
When you check with the RTC folks, can you ask them if they're aware of any other national accounts? I know the Rails to Trails Consortium has been looking a lot at that kind of data. I can't remember the name, but the woman who heads their analytics group.
Torsha, is that
Torsha,
correct?
yeah,
Torsha. Yeah, so I was thinking about just that same thing today. So I will definitely be asking her about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And put a plug in for them to update their app rather than using paper, but that's okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Any other questions on this? Yes. Debbie.
Since I'm the newest one, is anybody, including Casey, surprised at the volume or the rate between pedestrians and bicyclists? It seemed really high to me, but maybe that's,
Overall,
yeah. Is anybody surprised and knows kind of what you thought?
I'm not really surprised, given our experience with COVID and the whole desire to be outdoors, to know that it's safe to be outdoors, or safer. There's less risk when you're outdoors with the group. So I think that there has been a really high focus on making sure that we are creating a safe environment along the trail, and that people are just taking advantage of it. There's so many people who have discovered it and make it a part of their everyday life. So I'm not surprised. I think Matt is correct that there will be a change in how it is used once the bridge is completed, and we'll see higher cyclists, I think, because it is also linked to a commuter rail station.
Right. And we also have the folks at Comerford Road, that part of near the Rotary, that they've been pushing to have use the bridge to go to school once it's up. Which reminds me that we asked for the special period midday at the 2 to 4 on Thursday to track school age riders, and I'm not sure how we want to share that data back to the school, but I think it might be useful to share it back to the safe rides to school. Let them know kind of what we saw.
Yeah, Phil Post, I kind of coordinates that with some other guys, and he's on the transportation committee as well.
Okay, so he'll see this data. All right, that's good.
You have a question from Greg Mueller.
Greg Mueller.
Hi, Greg Mueller, 95 Stonewood Lane. I would just sort of, as an effort, I hear it's fantastic news in terms of the potential for increasing the financial benefit in Concord Center. But sitting on this slide, I would, in speaking on behalf of sort of the interests of White Pond, would indicate just it's a busy, popular place, and for the folks that care about the pond, this would certainly indicate, sort of reinforce some of the concerns that those residents have had, or I guess to say it directly, that I've had.
Thank you for bringing that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I did a couple of counts. I think Greg, you and I met at one of the counting times, and I was aware of a lot of traffic at Powder Mill, and so that is still I won't speak for the committee, but as a member, I certainly want to make sure that the trail respects the environment around White Pond, and we're still committed to doing as much as we can to do, support that.
So two things. One, I meant to say thanks to all the counters, by the way, because it was, I mean, it wasn't straightforward. But just to get back to this data, I think it is interesting that all the 4 locations besides Powder Mill do represent sort of higher, I don't want to say higher traffic, but like higher density areas than that Powder Mill spot. So that number really jumps out to me. And I just would sort of say is, I think is representative of some of the concerns of the residents there.
Actually, one point to build on, Greg, is that it is the terminus of the trail. And so I remember that a number of people, when they ride by, go to the chain link fence and turn around, they get counted twice. Right.
Oh.
So that's part of the requirement for it.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know how that came about, Casey. I assume that's part of the protocol, and it may be worthwhile in the next count to see if you can work through it.
No, I think that's really fair, and I think it'll be interesting to see once it continues, if this continues to be a thing, or if it really is those double counts really coming back, which I feel like is a pretty good hypothesis.
And even if it is double count, it does represent a decent chunk there.
Yeah, big number. Yeah, I wasn't minimizing.
When the trail's open further, presumably a big percentage of people will come back.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Is I know we've been talking
They
a lot
will,
about
yeah.
how trail usage is going to increase once we have the Route 2
Right.
connection, but also when Sudbury completes their work
Oh, yeah.
and we do that last Concord half mile, that's going to create different traffic patterns.
Yeah.
as well.
And I anecdotally, I covered that site, and there were clearly a number of kids and families coming down the circular thing from
Yeah.
the neighborhood,
Right.
and heading out to toward Concord, West Concord, and
Right.
then came back.
Right.
If I was still there, but it was a good number of people using that circular thing.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
thanks again.
Matt Johnson also has.
Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more comment about the preponderance of pedestrians, and I don't think it's broken out here, but one thing to note is that some of those pedestrians are runners, and that this trail's configuration is particularly well suited to joggers. And I not only am one of them, but I see many of them out on the trail. They're just the length of the segments, the way that they can be, combined into a loop route and things like that makes it incredibly popular with those people. So I think that's why one other reason you're seeing pedestrians is a higher percentage, I think, of users on this segment of rail trail than most.
Interesting. Okay. And any other comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Awesome. And we're looking forward to hearing what you hear from the RTC.
Absolutely.
And I'll be in touch with you about funding those counters, okay?
That sounds great. Thank you so much again for everyone. I mean, this is great. I'm very excited. This is some fun data to play around with too. So thank you for having me.
Okay. Well, we look forward to having you back in November after the next count.
There we go. Perfect. Sounds great. All right, everyone, have a good evening.
Thank you, Casey. The next on the agenda is the site visit. Marcy mentioned briefly that actually all 4 of you were there. Debbie, Dorcas, Adrian, and you were there.
Exactly.
You want to give us a quick?
Well, it started early in the morning. I had a hammer and I had a song, and that was all that.
Right.
By my count, there were about 7 residents who attended. I mean, Matt attended, Matt Johnson, and everybody here else attended except
Except for me. Yep.
And I think it was helpful for those folks who came to have stakes in the ground and see where the 50-foot lines are and understand. Help, having to juggle a bunch of plans, it can be difficult. So I think it was a good thing. And I think, in the future, that kind of visual assist will be good if we need another site visit, which we very well might. I think also Marcia was effectively communicating, I think, to most folks that this is what's in the plan, but there's already been questions raised about the plan, and thus it may be necessary to, deal with that. And I think that folks did have questions about, well, what does that mean in terms of if we hear back from Mass DOT in another week or 2 weeks or month, whenever that is, what do we do? If they say, certain fencing that we've put in is not eligible to be put in unless somebody else pays for it other than them. And so those two, one option is, as Marcia mentioned earlier, the idea of some community preservation funding that might be available, possibly, or some other funding that might be attainable through contacting our state representatives. Apparently, on the tunnel issue, the tunnel was made taller than was absolutely necessary, and that was with the assistance of our state representatives and state senator. So once we get the word from DOT, then we can move forward. But I personally indicated to some of the folks who came that, we've put fencing all along, and there may be at some point a decision that certain fencing is what's worth sort of going to the mat for, and other fencing, it's going to be harder to make the argument that we have to have, that it's quite as necessary when there are limited resources, throughout state, federal, and locally, obviously. So, but I think most people were very appreciative of the fact that we've sort of again gone to the extra effort of trying to make as clear as possible what's actually going to happen on the ground.
Right, what it looks like.
It was useful for me to do to see it.
And you were one heck of a stake hammerer too.
Oh, a stake, yeah. Well, you were the stakeholder.
Right. Well, we're all stakeholders. Okay. Other member comments from the walk that build on what Richard said?
As somebody who rides the length of the rail trail, in my 5 weeks there, I've ridden it twice, the entire 11 to 22 miles total. Seeing how, as they say, the sausage is made was very interesting, because I've ridden rail trails in, I guess, 4 or 5 other states now, and the thought that there would be an area without a fence, it really jumped out at me. And it really gave me pause to imagine, as a cyclist, what are the safety issues? Obviously, I'm not a pedestrian, but as a pedestrian, what would the issues be? I'm not even thinking about, because the whole issue of the abutters, I'll call them, that was a new thing. So it was terrific hearing them. But so I guess all of that said, I'm always just thinking about how do we relate to others? So my next question I thought to myself is, in rail trails and other parts of the country, when they're confronted with these situations, how often do they not have a fence? You are terrific at explaining all of the issues. If there's a deep ravine, obviously you do. If there isn't, you don't. But it just would be good to have some comparative information, because the thought of not having fencing of some kind for a large section, again, without any statistics, this doesn't sit well. So, but there's money. So it'd be good to be able to buttress it with, and here's what happens elsewhere.
Well, maybe one thing we can do on our next rides up the trail would be to look at what all the other towns have and what Mass DOT has done.
Yeah.
And I know things change over time.
Yeah.
But there may be places where, you could say, well, look, here was fences, but it wasn't necessarily safety.
Do we have contacts with the other towns?
Not officially, no.
Okay.
But we have been talking about trying to do a meeting sometime later this year with all the other.
Okay.
New England is such that, we have each jurisdiction has much more control than many other parts of the country. I'm assuming in many other parts of the country, the county would run the rail trail. So, it would have been, there wouldn't have been Concord stops and waits for Sudbury, or at the other end, like what Bedford's doing with paving reformatory. Concord would have been involved. I mean, that would have been somebody with authority would have come in and figured out what to do on a bigger scale. Here it's town by town, whether it's
Yeah.
even local services, are determined on a very small scale compared to much of the rest of the country.
Yeah.
So getting any of these projects done is a little more difficult because of that, I think. Because, the neighbors and everybody involved had a plan that was then put on paper and then never looked at by the state. And now the plan gets looked at and they go, oh, well, gee, well, it's been stale. And then people who thought it was all resolved, they're finding out, some period of time
As
later.
we are finding out.
That, oh, well, no, actually it's not necessarily going to be the way it was. If it had all been one thing, you would have found that out in months, not years later.
Yeah.
It would be interesting if the Rails to Trails Conservancy or whatever they're called, if they just over the years they have like, oh, here's your contacts and all the places in Massachusetts, just because like they just keep track, and then we could just do a blast email. Hi, we have one question survey for you. Answer this question.
So it's good.
Any other member questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public on that issue? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. On the issue of the sidewalk. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have another public comment section a little bit later on. The next item on the agenda is the Route 2 bridge update. Marcia, you kind of stole my thunder saying the girders were there. I drove by earlier this week and I was so excited. Oh, Greg Mueller raised his hand. Oh, sorry. We'll pause and go ahead, Greg Mueller. You're muted. Greg is still muted. There we go. And we're not hearing you.
Hi, sorry about that. I was double muted. Greg Mueller, 95 Stone Lane. I just want to say thank you, Marcia. That was super helpful to walk through, and for actually the committee members to attend. And Matt, it was terrific for you guys to sort of be there, to sort of at least start to appreciate kind of the extent of some of the the fall areas, or where the path drops off really quickly. So thanks for that. And I think just having gone through it, it was super helpful to get that sort of very, I guess I would sort of say, pretty as precise as we could get measurements on that. So I just want to say thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for recognizing the work of Marcia and her team and the committee. So I will say we did have fun in the morning putting that in there. So
Marcia, you said you were going to leave the stakes in for another
For a week.
so residents could point out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I've had communication from some of the Stone Root Lane residents about who were not able to attend. So I'm going to respond with a plan and let them know that the stakes are there, that they can go out and look at it. I did run into somebody up on Powder Mill Road who was late and didn't make it, but he took a picture of it and went down to look at the stakes. So I thought that was really good.
And so, Greg, if I know you're the trustee, if you have any other questions or if you know of other people who want to take a look, the stakes will be there for another week or so.
Fantastic. And Marcia, I know I don't want to add to your workload, but if there are Stone Root people you want to send my way, I can, I'm certainly around for the next 4 or 5 days. I can walk people through it.
Oh, very good. I will do that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the offer, Greg.
Yep.
Moving on to Route 2 Bridge. The girders are going up this weekend, as Marcia said, and July 22nd, I think, is still the date that we heard. I can't believe it's going to take so long to build this bridge. 2022 in July. It seems like a long time. Okay.
July 27th.
July 27th?
Right, so that's what you said, or almost said. See how it
Is a
does
girder
10
like
days.
a metal?
That big, huge,
steel.
yeah, the big, huge steel beam.
So it's 1 year to do that.
Well,
No, that's one day.
that's the beam.
The
You
beam,
still have to lay down the
they
whatever
gotta
support
finish
is,
the
and then
bridge.
they have to pave it. And
right.
so-
They put it with the fence in, and they got to do all the
then they have to
landscaping.
finish the trail, which they can't do until the bridge is
I,
done. because-
I would be up there yelling at them, but it wouldn't be appropriate. Because I really want to ride this thing. So,
They built the
Um,
bridge.
Just how many other weekend closures there'll probably be between now and completion?
good question. Marcia,
This will be it.
This is it. I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like astonishing to me that they can do the rest with cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait, if there's
Right.
only a girder, like, how do they do everything?
It's probably a series of
Climb around
panels.
up
and-
there.
They work.
It's like they're building a bridge.
I'll drive down Weatherby.
Don't drive across girders. Okay, next item are committee liaison reports. Anything to share out?
I've got a few. Okay, sure. Well, that's correspondence, right? But the transportation committee met this afternoon. We've already addressed, Marcia addressed one issue that came up. The other is that it has been established to have a bike subcommittee with 5 members. There are currently 3 members from that committee that are on it, so they'll be looking for 2 more. I will, for now, agree to be a liaison to that, as well as the transportation thing, since it seems to make sense. I think there's been at least 1 green card submitted for somebody to do that. In terms of Junction Park,
I'm sorry, should we ask if one of our members would be appointed to the subcommittee?
we can't be because we're already on a committee.
Okay.
Isn't there a requirement that every member has to be part of another committee or something?
Liaison.
We're liaison. Yeah, this is a liaison. We're not non-voting. We go, we listen, we hear.
I would say we'll revisit liaisons at our September
meeting, yeah.
Okay, so I don't
You
know
don't have
if
any,
you've already done this, so we don't have to do anything.
You have to
right
do
you
now.
don't, no, not right
Okay, I
now.
apologize.
That's all
We'll
right.
figure that out. So
This is your first meeting. You get to ask all these questions.
the
Even at your second.
I was just gonna say,
Or
you know,
fifth.
sorry, I'm like,
the Junction Park issue, which I'm going to just bring Debbie up to date on quickly, is that, you know, the rail trail goes through Junction Park there in West Concord, and people are requested to get off their bikes. Many don't, and there's concern about, you know, people getting hurt. There's a lot of diverse populations use it, young kids, old people. So the town transportation committee, you know, we said this should be addressed. It's determined that the town's transportation advisory committee is the appropriate place to address it. And they have come up with a plan of signage and such, which is not up yet, but should be up soon, next week or so. There's model signs that people can take a look
Well,
at.
we're also doing pavement markings. And
Right.
We're waiting because of the
Yeah,
rain.
it's
We haven't been
rained.
able
It's
to
rained
do
all
it.
month,
Right. So we're waiting for a dry period to see what it looks like to do the stencils and understand, you know, what colors to be using and so forth. So that has to be done. Public Works will be doing that. And I think they're going to schedule a site visit for the committee to take a look at that.
Isn't there signage there? I feel like.
There
Oh,
is,
there's huge signs.
Yeah.
There's
huge
signs, so it's another
But
attempt at
but
signs.
cyclists aren't looking. They're not looking up. They're looking down many times, which is why we're adding some pavement markings too.
And that's a short-term solution for now.
It's but
Potentially.
it's going to see how it works. And I think that there's I think the Green Thumbs, which is the volunteer group that maintains the park, is going to be doing something part of that. It's going to be doing some informal or semi-formal counting of people who are getting up and off their bikes, that kind of thing. I think that's it in terms of the transportation relevant to us. There's also the Disability Commission, which I have met with. They're concerned about, you know, whether mobility assisting devices can be used. And I basically assured them that they can. And there was an issue about mobility assisted devices going through Junction Park. And I said, I assured them they could. And that they were interested. Well, how many people were, when I mentioned the count, how many people were potentially using such devices in the count? So I said, that's something we could consider pretty easily adding, even if it's not formally part of the full study. We could just note down, oh, there's somebody in a wheelchair. Now, you might not be able to tell somebody necessarily even, but it would give us a sense. I was doing the bridge, and there were definitely people from Concord Park coming on their own or with somebody helping them along, some kind of attendant. So I thought that could be conceivably included. And as Marcia mentioned, the issue of the curb cut so that folks can get onto the bridge area of the trail. I've made them aware that it's moving forward, that that's going to get done at some point. The issue, something we discussed last time briefly, was the enforcement issue. In other words, if someone is not playing by the rules, and this came up to, it's just using something that they shouldn't use, not an assisted living, who would enforce it? And I don't think we ever fully figured that out because it's not clear what law you're breaking.
I haven't followed, I
Yeah.
started the research, but I haven't.
Yeah,
finalized
so
it.
that, but they just raised that. So, so I think that was, their folks are happy with what's going on the trail in general, from the Disability Commission.
Is it inappropriate to make a slightly humorous joke at this time?
It's under the public record. Go for it.
Yeah.
It reminds me, of London where there are cameras everywhere, and I can imagine the day if we're in another country where you're going right to that area and you don't dismount, and through facial recognition they'll know who you are.
And that's
You'll go home and you get a bill.
Right. I mean, if they can get your license plate going 65 miles an hour down the highway,
That concludes my joke.
Okay.
yeah. Or we issue bicycle licenses, which had been done in the past.
Dorcas, you had something you wanted to talk about.
Oh, I was in the park today reading, watching all the people on bikes not dismounted. I would say in the hour that I was there, probably 20 bikes, of which several were electric bikes. And so at some point we need to talk about electric bikes.
And we had said at one of our last meetings, I think that we had some research to do to figure out who had the regulatory oversight and what the guidance was from the state and the feds, who can tell us. And then I think we need to have a discussion as a committee about e-bikes.
Yeah, I saw
And beyond, I mean,
And beyond.
because you wanted to reach out to
To our
other
towns, right, to our
communities.
to other communities, right.
because we can't say no if Acton and Sudbury are saying yes.
Right.
If the state says yes, then we
Right.
can't say no.
Right.
I think one of the things is obviously from my research today, there's different kinds of electric bikes. And they obviously go at different speeds.
Yep.
So that's all something that we have to calculate, I guess.
Yeah, I think this is going to be, once we get past the 75% design, I think our next hot topic is going to be e-bikes and what we do about them.
And I mean, an e-bike could be construed as a mobility assisting device also. So it's,
So it'll be fun. John, did you have anything you wanted to bring up as a committee member? You can shake your head, or you have any issues? No, you're okay. You're shaking your head. Okay, you're fine. All right. I just wanted to check in, make sure that you were being listened to if necessary. Any other liaison reports or
I guess, well, I'll just report quickly on the prison. We discussed former physician at the prison was interested in having some recognition of the prison's history as part of the rail trail, including the cemetery, which is no longer being used, but does exist, as well as some commemorative issues. So she's met with Concord, with prison authorities who I've gotten an email from who are interested in doing that. And I think they're going to contact Marcia at some point about signage. And with the Concord Restorative Justice Program and the prison outreach, also, volunteer organizations here in Concord who are interested in doing something. So we'll hear more back from them at some point.
so Marcia, one of the things that was suggested was maybe we do like a brick walkway with the numbers of, I guess, the identification number and name of each prisoner. And what do we need? We just need to wait for a proposal from this group.
We have a location in mind.
Okay.
Work.
Yeah. Between the rails, we're talking
Right.
about now.
But the state will have to do it too.
Right. All right. So Debbie, just so you know, this woman was a physician at the prison for many years, and she wanted to somehow commemorate the prisoners, and also the fact that the prison played a big role in the development of West Concord, right? It's been there for a long time. And the railroad ran right to it. And an affiliated branch was the Reformatory Branch Trail, which came right on the other.
Yeah,
other
actually,
side.
the Concord Historical Commission's interested as
Right,
well as participating. So it could be an interesting little
So it's,
addition.
so that's where I was lost. So it's not just, oh, we happen to have 2 prisons in this town, we happen to have a rail trail. It's the railroad went to the
Went to
prison.
the prison, yeah.
Right.
The prison was actually the impetus for the development in West Concord because there were some limited businesses, but when the prison came to Concord, many of the workers ended up moving here, and they brought with them the churches were established, the library was established, the schools were established. So they brought with them some of the cultural impetus for West Concord to develop as almost a separate community. And Concord Center was actually envious of West Concord because it had the junction of the north-south branch and the east-west branch, and lobbied heavily to make sure that the east-west traveled through Concord Center.
The Reformatory Branch.
No, not the
Fitchburg.
the actual Fitchburg
Okay.
line.
Yeah.
Made sure that it went through Concord Center. So there is an extensive history with the railroad.
Just again, as an outsider, you may find this anecdote interesting. When I was looking for a place to live, I went to the pizza place that's in West Concord.
Dino's.
Yes, and so I went in there and I just asked the counter woman, I said, "Oh, I'm looking for a place. I got these 2 choices." And she's like, "Do you know that there's a big difference between West Concord and Concord?" And I
West
said,
Concord's much better.
right. And so then she told, she spent about 20 minutes.
There's a lot of very strong
Opinions, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
sure.
this is completely insane. So
The official position of the Rail Trail Committee is that we like both
All
parts of Concord.
Concord.
All
Oh,
of Concord is
yeah.
good, right.
I mean, clearly we can't have one without the other. So thank you for that background. That's extremely helpful. So now I know the connection between the prison and the rail trail.
Yeah, I mean, as I said this before, but as a history person, I mean, the signage that Marsh has worked on with the committee, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I read the thing at the bridge several times because, I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And this would add to that thing without detracting from the basic, movement along the trail.
Okay, I'm gonna move us forward a bit, if that's okay. Let's see. Are there any public comments right now? Any other comments or questions the public would like to make? Good. Okay. Our next meeting.
Let me do my correspondence.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
We had a request from neighbors who live on Route 2A between the Rotary and Acton, Lally Woods, and another development that they're kind of totally landlocked in a sense. They can't do anything. There's no sidewalks. The rail trail isn't far when you go into Acton and over, and then they could ride their, connect over the bridge. And I went over there and checked out the situation, and we sent a letter to Mass DOT about looking at the options of building a sidewalk in that area, as well as making signalization a way that would be safe to cross Route 2A. And that would be in Acton at that point. And then also looking at the speed limits. So got a nice letter back from Mass DOT, which basically said that yes, they have looked at sidewalks in the 2A in general, but the project that they're doing does not include the level at which it would take to make a sidewalk in that area because of as they say, it would require, topographic surveys, full-scale drawings, advanced environmental permitting. So if local resources allow, the town could consider designing and funding this route through an access permit process, which I guess lets us do the work for the state. or apply to Mass Trails grant. So the town could do that. And in terms of speed, it's a speed study has to be conducted. The town could request that that be done. So I want to, share this with the neighbors who had originally, come to us. But I guess the next step is whether or not, the town could at least respond to whether the town is interested in the options that are being presented by the Mass DOT. So can you do we go to the town manager, do you think, for that? Share this with him and say, what do you think?
Well, that's beyond like the Bruce Freeman, like I think it's nice to
Yeah.
lend support.
Right. No,
Or
that's it.
at
I
what
don't-
point do we
Yeah.
pass the baton?
Yep.
Yeah, to like the
Correct.
residents, like informing
Right,
them
we
of
could,
their options.
that could be
and
fine too. We'll just say, here it is.
Do they raise
and
something? That's town meeting? I don't know
Now
what
you
they do.
go and.
I think that's correct. We
Okay.
don't have a dog in this hunt, as they say. We're not authorized for anything beyond the trail.
Well,
But
I mean,
we did support this.
well, the
because this
reason we
needs to
got
be
involved
used
was that it is in our purview to ensure safe
Like access.
Yeah.
access to the
right.
trail.
Right.
This is
Sort of
under
that,
that
right.
purview, but this is a big difference than like, Route 62, slow traffic down, maybe make a better crosswalk, or like what Marcia just got was the better, Marlboro Road, Elmer Marlboro and Williams, same idea, safe access to the trail as people pass by it, also to get on it is safer at that point. So
I'll have to look at the specifics, but I think it was Caroline Mahoney or someone had presented, right, with you from the meeting. I saw them with the next door community page. I don't know if any of your neighborhoods are a part of it.
Uh-huh.
She posted something asking for support. I don't know if it was a petition. I don't know if it was anticipating
yeah,
something
they had
like
a,
this.
they had
but
a big
She's
petition
trying to circulate something.
because it's
yeah.
also the Black Horse neighborhood, the other side, that
Yeah.
area that's
Comerford,
been,
whatever it is,
yeah,
yeah.
that whole Comerford loop that's been built, the Black Birch thing. So I guess that's fine. I mean, I'm not, advocating we go off and start lobbying for this to happen at the same level.
Yeah. So what do other members think? I mean, we don't have, except for the access piece, we don't have authority to, other than to say we like the idea or we support them. We really can't do much else. Any other thoughts from other committee members?
I have a comment and a question. The question is, I just need to visualize it, probably because I am not familiar with the neighborhood. How does the rail trail, what does the rail trail have to do with building sidewalk? I apologize for
Yep.
my.
Yeah.
No worries. So if you imagine rail trail cuts from southeast to northwest,
Okay.
and like this, so it's going up this way. You have the rotary here, and you have two-way going up here, and they eventually cross farther down. But the idea is this Comerford Road neighborhood. Right now, they have no safe access to Acton Sports to get to the trail. That's where the trail
And
entrance
it's
is right now,
close. I mean,
and it's very close to them.
Close
They're literally
relative.
across
So
the
it's like
marsh.
a sliver of Concord beyond the rotary right before Acton.
And
And there's a
it's also-
sidewalk in Acton. You have the rotary in Concord and they're in kind of like this no man's land if they can't access some of these
Right.
amenities that are being built.
The kids can't,
Right
there's
next
no
to them.
sidewalks, basically.
There's no
Now,
sidewalk.
people move there knowing there's sidewalks, so, I mean,
What would make it within our purview? Like pretend the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail didn't exist and we were, sketching out a plan. Would
It wouldn't
that,
be in our purview.
it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
it's still,
Yeah.
I mean, there was, the neighbors looked at an option to create a trail kind of back behind their development toward it. And that's conceivable, but
Mhm.
would require other private owners agreeing to let them do that.
Yeah, and if they put a sidewalk in, it would continue into Acton, and then they could ride to actually a road intersection.
Safe intersection.
No, it's Weatherby's the closest one, right? That they could go to.
Well, or they would put in the lights, kind of flashing lights, and you'd wait for people to stop. So I think that if we, I don't think we need to vote or anything, I will contact the neighbors and say,
And let them
"This is our
know this is
response."
what-
Yeah.
that was gonna be my
Yeah,
comment.
and I will suggest to them that they the town manager, the select board, or the state reps, which they have done. They've been in touch.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Thank you.
That's correspondence. Any other correspondence? Okay, usually I've been told, even though I've been here less than a year, that we usually postpone or cancel the August meeting because of vacation. Our next meeting date then would be Thursday, September 2nd, which is the Thursday before Labor Day. So the point I'd like to raise with the committee is, do we want to have it on the first Thursday, which is traditional, or should we push it back a week to September 9th? And I don't even know, Marcia, if we have access to a room on that Thursday. But that's the point for discussion right now. Do we want to keep our traditional first Thursday date or consider pushing back? Thomas?
Does anybody know they definitely not be able to make the meeting?
On the second, yeah. Then
I'm 50% not gonna be here. I traditionally am not anyway. so
Okay.
I prefer to be delayed, but
the-
I can always
checking
join
your
by Zoom
calendar.
if I'm not here.
Adrian?
We do have the advantage, you can always zoom in.
I could join in.
Okay,
On the second, yeah, no problem for me.
no problem. Okay. John, are you around on the second?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, that's a definite maybe.
I'm a definite, I don't know,
Okay.
As long as we have Zoom, I think.
but, you know,
So the second or the ninth? I'm hearing maybe, then maybe if we
well,
do it the
9th
ninth,
would be
is
solid.
everybody solid on the ninth?
School's back in.
Goes back in.
Yeah, school starts the 30th of August.
Oof,
Yeah.
poor kids.
Well, yeah,
The 9th, I'm just curious if there's any other town.
The
regular.
Meeting.
zoning board of appeals is likely to meet that
Okay.
evening in Kais Road. But, you know, there's 2 meeting rooms at Kais Road, so you might be able to get the other one.
We're only set up for a hybrid in this room though, right now.
Okay.
So it depends.
Yeah, so you might just have to do a live meeting, which by September, maybe.
Okay. All right.
So
I
this
think-
room is not available on the 9th, is that
It's
what?
not available.
Well, I don't know that.
You don't know that.
The zoning board of appeals typically meets the second Thursday of each month. However, they have chosen so far not to have a hybrid meeting and not to meet in person, but to continue to meet
Okay,
by Zoom. So so I need to check.
okay,
Why don't we leave it tentative and I can let you know.
Okay,
this week, and
sure.
then we can make that decision.
Yeah.
okay. That's
Yeah, I
it.
thought that September they were gonna revisit, but we'll see.
You'll find out, let us know, and then we'll,
We'll
the,
leave it in second for now.
live a second, but we'll do the ninth if
We can change.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, may I have a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the meeting.
Second,
I see a hand
Oh.
is up for Greg
Hands up.
Mueller.
Can I pause that for a second? Greg, please? You're muted, double muted.
Did he ever put his hand down from before?
Good question.
I don't know.
Greg, did you
I
put your
saw
hand down?
looking at the screen, thank goodness, I looked at people.
Muted there.
You're still muted, Greg.
No.
Here we go.
Hi, can you hear me? Hey, Greg Mueller here.
Hearing you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Greg Mueller, 95 Stone Lane. Just really, one quick question will there be any notes or written summaries or conclusions from the walkthrough?
No.
It
No.
wasn't a recognized meeting. It was just to inform people who wanted to show up of what
Right.
was planned.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
It'll be his
Thank you, Greg.
minutes.
So I will continue. We've had a motion and a second. I'll call roll call to close the meeting. Ms. Boardman,
Yes.
Mr. Hollander,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Soden,
Aye.
Ms. Edelman,
Yes.
and I, Nat Welch, also vote. So at 8:25, this meeting is finished. Thank you all for attending. Thank you to everyone who joined.